guys, it's Jessica from Peace Love Books, and today we're the video that I've done twice on my channel before, but it's been quite a while since I've done one of these, and that is asking some of my favorite authors their favorite romances and sharing them with you. And how this works is I will share my favorite book from that author, so you get my recommendation, and then you also get their recommendation, and a majority of these I myself have not read, so I'm really excited to talk about all these books and let you know some romance recommendations. So if you have a favorite author on this list, you can have a recommendation from them and go read that next. The first author, of course, that I had to reach out to is QB Tyler. I love QB Tyler's books. She is the queen of taboo forbidden romances. My first book by her is still my favorite, and that is Forget Me Not. This one you guys have heard me talk about so many times. It is definitely a very angsty romance, and it's the least forbidden of all of hers, but I've really enjoyed her forbidden romances. But this one is about a married couple. It's marriage in trouble, and he cheats on her, and so they are literally like a month out from getting a divorce, and he gets into an accident and he gets amnesia and does not remember the years that their marriage fell apart. And so he thinks he's so madly in love with her and that she's madly in love with him, and they have to work through things. And please know this deals with cheating. This is messy. Our characters don't make the best decisions, but I loved every single second of this book. I actually got to interview QB on my channel, so go check that out if you want to. I'll link that down below. I loved talking to her. Her new book comes out soon, and I just love her as an author so much and as a person. And so she recommended, no surprise if you watch the interview, Sinner by Sierra Simone. And now I've actually read Priest. Shocking, I know. I read it yesterday actually, and I surprisingly really liked it. And so Priest is super taboo. Sinner I've heard absolutely amazing things about, and so I'm really excited for that. And also Saint as well, which is, I think Saint's the last book in the series. I think Sinner's number 2. I could be wrong, but I've heard really great things and how just complicated the romances are. It was definitely complicated in book 1, and I just talked about this on TikTok about how I love desperation in romances and how they are desperate to love each other, but like other circumstances make it that they can't. So I really enjoyed this one. Then I reached out to Sophie Lark, and now I don't know what I like better from her. So as a starting point, I think I'm going to recommend Brutal Prince, even though I love the There Are No Saints, There Are No Sinners duet. But Brutal Prince is such a good intro into her mafia books and her dark romances, and this one is an enemies to lovers arranged marriage, which is like the perfect trope, and they hate each other. They're from rival families, but then something happens where they have to get married because their families are like fed up with their feuding. They literally try to kill each other at some points, and it's the best. And book 2 is amazing as well. And Sophie went with a classic. She recommended Persuasion, and now let me pull up her message because what she said is so spot on. So she messaged me to say, I think it's the all-time best second chance romance. Just reread it last week, and I was like, Captain Wentworth is still sexy after 200 years. I have read all of Jane Austen's main novels. I absolutely love them, and I think Persuasion's definitely top tier, one of my favorites of hers, just because of the second chance. And I, as a historical romance lover, like I understand, even though Jane Austen is contemporary for her time, I understand the dilemma of marrying for love versus money, and how Wentworth came back finally with money, and the letter scene, it's so good. So I would highly recommend picking this one up if you're interested in Jane Austen. Then I had to reach out to Jennifer Hartman, who is a new favorite author of mine. I am so excited to get into her backlist. She wrote Still Beating, which still lives in my mind today. I read it in the beginning of January. Absolutely fell in love with it. It's very, very dark. Our hero and our heroine are kidnapped together, forced to do really awful things, and they escape, and they have to figure out how to live life afterwards, and he's her sister's fiance. Like, I love romances where one of them's already taken, especially by someone that they are close to. Like, give me all the drama and angst. I love it. And so in this book, they actually really hate each other because they've known each other since they were in high school, and her sister's been dating him for over 10 years, and they're finally engaged, and they always like poke fun at each other and make fun of each other and like play pranks on each other, but they are kidnapped together, and it just creates this unbreakable bond between them, and they're the only ones that can understand what they went through, and it is just the most heart-wrenching romance I've ever read, and I loved it so much. So also, kind of no surprises is on this list. There are such iconic authors that these authors have recommended. She recommends Lessons in Sin by Pam Godwin, which was one that's actually on my TBR I'm hoping to get to this week for a specific video I'm filming. And this one, first of all, I love Pam Godwin. Sea of Ruin is like top tier romance for me, and I really love Dark Notes. I need to read more by her, but Lessons in Sin is another taboo priest romance, and it is actually like a boarding school romance too, so I'm really excited to read this book, and I've heard phenomenal things from people about it. I'm just a little wary because of the content, but after reading Priest, I'm like pretty open to reading more like it, so I am excited to read this, and I can see why Jennifer would have recommended this book. Then I asked Carla Sorensen for her recommendation because Forbidden was one of my top books last year. I talked about this book nonstop. It is book 4 in the series. It can be read as a standalone, though I really loved book 1, and I really love their brother's book, which is an entirely different series. So his is, I think, book 3 of his series, and then these are all of his sisters, which he actually like adopted as his own children because their parents died. But in this one, our heroine works at a gym. The gym is sold and has a new owner, and the owner is a single dad, and he is an ex-fighter who she was like infatuated with as a child. Like she had posters of him on her walls and would like write her name, not as a child, like as a teenager, and she would write like her name with his last name all over her notebooks, and she was just like had a childhood crush on him, right? Now she sees him in real life and they spend time together, and it's an age gap, kind of forbidden romance, and it is amazing. And now we actually have a historical recommendation from Carla. So she said she's gonna recommend Bringing Down the Duke by Evie Dunmore. It has so much heart, and I couldn't believe it was her debut. It's a historical romance with a lot of modern sensibilities, and I love that. And I would agree, Evie Dunmore writes very modern historical romances. It has like that very forward-thinking heroine in it, and it definitely took off as an author's first book. So this is a really fun historical romance if you're looking to get into the genre. So I love that Carla is recommending historical romances. Then I reached out to Danielle Allen, who wrote Truth or Dare, which is one of my favorites, I think 2 years ago, and it is a friends to lovers romance. I'm actually currently reading Business Casual by her, which is a office romance, forbidden romance, and I am loving it. I'm already halfway through, and I think she just writes like tension between our characters really well, because in Truth or Dare it's a friend group and they are all together because 2 of their friends are getting married, and they have this rule among them where we can't hook up with each other unless it's like trying out a serious relationship, because they don't need like messy drama with their friends. So they always play Truth or Dare, and she kisses one of her friends and they're like, what was that? And they've never seen each other that way before, and so then they're like kind of sneaking around together at this wedding, and it is just so good. And so Danielle Allen recommended another one of my favorite authors. She recommended The Mixtape by Brittany C. Cherry, and I actually have not read this book yet, and I don't even know the premise of this book, so I'm gonna look it up real quick. I love Brittany C. Cherry's Elements series. I read book 1 and 4, and 4 is one of my favorite books of all time. Oh, this is sad. So it says, since the death of his twin brother, Oliver's caught pleasing his fans and finding himself. Ooh, is he a like rock star? And then we have a single mom, and I think he like meets her at the bar she works at. He walks into her bar. That sounds so good, but as a twin myself, that sounds horrifying to read. So I definitely will have to be in the right mood to read this because he loses his twin brother, but it sounds like it's gonna be super emotional, and Brittany C. Cherry knows how to write super emotional books. So I definitely want to read this, and I can tell why Danielle Allen would recommend this one. Then I asked Danielle Jensen to recommend a book, and Danielle Jensen wrote the Bridge Kingdom series, which I talked about all the time last year. It is a fantasy romance. I absolutely loved it. It's enemies to lovers. She was raised pretty much to assassinate the prince, and she is then sent to be his bride and marry him, and she needs to kill him at some point. And so obviously like she'd only kill him because it's their romance, but it is such a good fantasy romance that I love. It's no surprise that she recommended Deal with the Elf King by Elise Kova. This one I saw a lot when it first released because of the cover. It is gorgeous, and this says the elves come for 2 things, war and wives, and that's so much. So it says that there's a young woman is chosen to be a human queen. The Elf King unexpectedly arrives for her, and I think he chooses her to come with him and be his new queen. So that sounds really fun. It says that it is inspired by Hades and Persephone, Beauty and the Beast, and has a happy ever after ending. This is one that I've been meaning to get to, that I really need to get to, because I love fantasy romances, and I feel like this one has like all of the elements for a fantastic one. The next one I asked is Kate Bateman. I love Kate Bateman so much. I don't know what I would say is my favorite book of hers because I love them all so much. Like, maybe it's The Princess and the Rogue. I don't know. I think I give all of her books 5 stars, especially her new one was really good, but The Princess and the Rogue was like another level because we have our heroine who is like a runaway Russian princess, and our hero who is kind of tasked to find her, but she's hiding because someone's trying to kill her, and then his, I think it's his aunt is who she's working for now, and like she's a little meddling, and it's so fun. It's such a good book. But Kate Bateman's answer is just like amazing. As a historical romance reader, I loved her answer. So it's this long paragraph. So it says, I fangirl so hard over Laura Kinsale, it's not even funny. Flowers from the Storm or Shadowheart are my favorites, which I read Flowers from the Storm, and it's really good, really heavy, but really good. And then she says, Loretta Chase Lord of Scoundrels is a classic, which I agree that is definitely a classic, a really fun historical romance. I think my wild card would be the seriously underrated As You Desire by Connie Brockway or Devil in Winter by Lisa Kleypas. So she said they're all keepers on my shelves. So I'm gonna go and look at As You Desire. I think most of you guys who watch my channel, if you read historical romances, you probably know about Devil in Winter by Lisa Kleypas. That is book 3 in her Wallflower series, and that's Evie and Sebastian's book. Beloved historical romance, but I am very intrigued by this Connie Brockway because I've not read this author before. It looks like it might have a setback. So this says, kidnapped, drugged, and about to be sold to the highest bidder, she is having a hard time maintaining her English pride. And then she sees a man in black galloping through the Egyptian desert on a pure white steed. And he is her hero. So he is a rogue, a scoundrel, and he's already broken her heart once. As brilliant as she is beautiful, she's learned to stay out of trouble, which is fine with him. And he knows he's gonna never be a proper match for her. And she catches the eye of his cousin, and he's determined to claim her once and for all. This sounds literally amazing, and I don't know how I've never heard of this before. Oh my goodness. So I love when historicals don't take place in London or the US. I love that it's a second chance romance and that he's not good enough for her. Oh my gosh, you guys. I'm gonna be adding this to my TBR like right away. I looked to see if my library had any audios because I get through books so much faster on audio because I have such a long physical TBR, but I couldn't find it. So I'll probably be ordering this book, and Kate Bateman, you are amazing for recommending this. Then I was pleasantly surprised that this author responded, because sometimes I like shoot my shot and see if they'll respond to me, and Allie Hazelwood responded. She wrote, I almost said Love on the Brain, but that's her second book, which I do have an e-arc of, which I'm freaking out about. But she wrote The Love Hypothesis, which literally blew up. Everybody and their mother was reading this book, and it is such a good fake dating office romance. Well, kind of office romance. They are both at school, so he's one of the professors and she's working on her PhD, and I feel like it's not really like student teacher because they're more not colleagues, but like she pretty much like works under him, and he's like on the committee of like dissertations and stuff like that, and like she obviously has to like work with him and work with people who work under him, so it's more office romance vibes, like they work in academic setting together, but it technically is like she is a student there. But it's amazing fake dating. I really, really love this book. It was in my top 10 of the year last year, and she recommended The Land of the Beautiful Dead by R. Lee Smith, which I've never heard of before. I've never seen that cover, so this is interesting. I don't know if this is fantasy, because the tagline is, she would dare anything to save the world from his rule, even his bed. So it says he ascended from the darkness years ago. He's Azrael. And now he rules the city of Haven with his favorite children and his dead court, and she's only ever known life there, and she still believes it can change. She's gonna go to Haven to go to Azrael himself and demand he end the Eaters. I don't know what the Eaters are. And then he offers her a chance to convince him, and all she has to do is submit herself to the chill embrace of the Lord of the Land of the Beautiful Dead. That sounds really fun, and I'm assuming it's like fantasy. That sounds like a lot of fun. And I appreciate Allie for recommending a book that I've never heard of before, that I've never even seen the title for, because now I'm very, very intrigued by that. Like, I'm really excited for myself to be reading these books that these authors are recommending. Then I reached out to Denise Williams, who I love for her 2 books that she has out, and I would say, I think her second release is my favorite, because this one is a fitness app romance, and so he owns a fitness app, and she's actually a journalist, and she is a plus size character, and she is determined to get like a full-time position where she writes, and so it's kind of a competition between her and someone else writing a piece about a different fitness app. And so she joined this fitness app to write about her experience and to just feel strong and healthy and not necessarily to lose weight, which I loved. And then her and this guy start talking. He is like really bogged down by like the professional side of running this app instead of just being the trainer that he's just like loved being, and so he is enjoying taking on clients, and they really like message each other and text each other and become really close friends, and then it starts to turn into something more, and it's so good. I really love that one. But she recommended another one I haven't heard of before, is Perfect Distraction by Allison Ashley, and this one, the cover is really cute, and this says that she accidentally spills coffee on an impossibly attractive man, and he's so out of her league, and she's focused on finishing her oncology pharmacy residency, and she's sworn off men. He can't stop thinking of her who crashed into him, and they run into each other at the cancer center where she's working and he's being treated. Are you trying to break my heart? So they try to keep things professional and they can be friends, but then they turn into something more. That's so sad. So I think it's friends to lovers, and she works on the oncology floor and he has cancer? I don't know. That sounds so good. So sad, but like so good. I love a good friends to lovers. I feel like that trope is severely underrated. Referencing back to Denise Williams' book that is Friends to Lovers, I think this sounds like a really good book. Then I reached out to Onley James because I read Unhinged and I became obsessed, and I'm so excited to read more in the Necessary Evil series. Unhinged is a serial killer romance and it's MM, so our one hero is a serial killer, but he's like a psychopath, so he was adopted by this doctor who adopted a bunch of psychopath children to learn to harvest their desires to kill for good, so they are like given people to kill and that's who they kill, and then they're helping out the world, right? And so the romance in there is just perfection. So Onley James says just one, LOL. I would say my very favorite romance books are book 1 and 2 of Stella Starling's Semper Fi series. They're nothing like my books at all, but I've read them both 1,000 times. So I'm gonna run to Goodreads. So it says Jake has been crushing on Gabe for half his life, since Gabe is a straight self-proclaimed commitment phobe who moved away years ago to join the Marines, and so he never thought anything would come out of it. So they're best friends. It's a friends to lovers. Oh, I just love good friends to lovers. Growing up, Gabe never saw Jake as anything more than the kid who always liked to tag along after him and his brothers, but then being friends with him has become the best part of his day. And after being on a 7-month deployment, Jake is the one thing he's looking forward the most to seeing. Gabe starts feeling some things for Jake. It sounds like such a cute friends lovers romance, and I love it, so I'm really excited to look into this, and I'm gonna mark it as to read on Goodreads and see if my library has a copy because I really want to read that. And then the last author I had to reach out to is Elizabeth O'Rourke, who wrote Waking Olivia, which you guys know I was absolutely obsessed with in the beginning of January. We have a cross-country runner heroine. I'm a runner, and so I love reading about runners, and she went through something very traumatic in her past, so she sleep runs, and she also gets into trouble with things. So she got kicked out of her last school, and she's now running for a D3 school, and she's the best runner on the team, and it's her romance with the coach. There's only like a 3-year age gap. It's not that forbidden, except for the fact that he is the cross-country coach, and he's super hard on her but helps her through her trauma, and it's just so good. Like, I still think about this book too, but Elizabeth recommended a few. So she said The Hating Game, but I think that's everyone's favorite of all time. LOL, and a little too obvious. A less obvious favorite is The One That Got Away by Bethany Chase. Eamon Roy, the hero, is to die for, and it's a very delicious slow burn. I think I know this cover. I've heard amazing things. I think it's yellow. Yeah, so it's yellow with the bird. I remember seeing this cover when it came out, and so many people were raving about it. And so this one says that she thinks she has everything nailed down in her life. She has an architecture practice. She thinks she's gonna get proposed to by her boyfriend. Her boyfriend is on temporary assignment abroad. And then retired Olympic swimmer and former flame Eamon Roy is back in town asking her to renovate his new fixer-upper. Ooh, so it sounds like things are gonna get a little bit messy, and that's like one of my favorite tropes in romances. So I really want to read that. Oh, but then it says tragedy strikes and her world is upended. I wonder what's gonna happen. It sounds like it's gonna be sad, but that sounds good. Elizabeth also said, I've read Sweet Filthy Boy by Christina Lauren so many times. Ansel is the ultimate book boyfriend, accidental Vegas husband. So that one is obviously, I think, the Wake Up in Vegas married romance. I've actually never read the series, but I know tons of people really love the series from Christina Lauren, and I'd love to go back to it someday. So that was my last author that responded. I love seeing what romance authors love reading because I feel like, I don't know, I just like want to know everything about my favorite authors, and the fact that like they write good books, they should know good books. So I feel like their romance recommendations you should take like very seriously because they know what they're talking about. So definitely check these out. Check these amazing authors out. I love them all so much, and now I have an even bigger TBR because of them. And if I do this again, let me know what authors you want me to ask. I do have 2 other versions of this, so if you're like, where's this author? I've asked a lot of my other favorite authors already, so check out my 2 other versions of this video, and that's all I have. As always, thank you so much for watching and have a good day. Bye.